Cool, we're recording. That was quick. Hey everybody, I'm Kasper. I'm doing Rails consultancy things in my day-to-day, and then here with Jeremy and also Ajay, we're trying to show this riffing technique to help domain modeling. I don't know if you want to introduce yourselves, maybe Jeremy, if you want to start.
Sure. I'm Jeremy Smith. I am a Rails developer. I run a tiny one-person studio called Hybrid. Yeah, it's been fun to work on this with Kasper.
Hey, I'm Ajay. I'm a lawyer, but I've been a Rails developer going back to 1.2. So, um, really looking forward to this. I think we all have interesting ideas about how we model the world, and so just that exchange, I think, is going to be really valuable for me. So,
Cool. Yeah, let's get into it. So the way we typically work is we have a spec, which Ajay has provided for us, and then we're gonna try to talk about it, sketch things out in just one Ruby file. If you've seen some of the other recordings, you know kind of how it's gonna look, but we'll try that. So I gotta share my screen. Where's the screen share button? It's hidden on it's somewhere hidden in our
Down
menu.
at the bottom.
Share screen, share this thing, share that. Okay.
Cool.
See, I hope you can see this stuff. Let me try to find this. So here's the spec we're going to be working on. I think we're just going to plow through some of that stuff. A bit more advanced, so many other things we've done. So this is sort of a short description up here, and then the full spec is a little bit down below. So I think we're just going to start looking at it and whatnot. I think I'm going to read it out here. A tool to help contract lawyers by organizing a cluttered collection of disorganized contracts and their versions in Google Drive with either different inconsistent naming, unreliable timestamps. And the tool aims to clarify contracts, order their versions chronologically, and summarize changes between versions. Summarize, yeah, so it's kind of like diffing in a way for lawyer documents, kind of. It updates the document index upon each new upload, whether the folder has been previously processed or not. That's interesting. There's always some chunk there of like but I guess you've clarified that in the rest of the spec there, but it's interesting reading the spec. I'm like, oh, that's already interesting because it kind of assumes there's sort of a document index and also a new upload where it's like, what does that mean in this context? Which is
I think,
interesting. Oh,
yeah, the diff comment is a really interesting one because in one way, I kind of think of this as like, oh, the GitHub for lawyers, but because we work largely with binary formats, traditional Git and diff principles don't apply. So the thought behind this piece, which we're building out into a project, is why can't we use the LLMs to do that? So, okay, I can't do a line by line comparison of my two files, but I'll just have the LLMs explain to me what the difference is and then capture that. And so for a lawyer, that's still pretty good. That's like my pull request. It can just go through and see, okay, this change between this version, this change between this version. Um, Maybe the last illustration I'll give before you start is if you've ever been involved in a document heavy business, you've seen kind of the like final dash draft underscore copy dash to underscore copy dot. So lawyers, you tend to open a file and there's 100 of those. And no one's sure if this is this 4 different documents and 10 versions of each, or is it 100 different documents, or is it one document? And so the goal is, can we just use the LLMs to automate that whole thing, which right now is a human process?
Right. And so almost wanting to consolidate versions into one icon in a way, or like a file, like, oh, here's this, and then you can see the versions there. But you click on the latest, I suppose, in a way.
Yeah.
Okay.
So usually for a lawyer, you are most interested in the latest, and then you're interested in how it got to that. So, if I'm negotiating a SaaS agreement with Microsoft, it's like, okay, we took Microsoft's initial draft, made the following changes. They pushed back on these and accepted these. We went back a couple of times, we got to the final one. And so knowing the shape of that negotiation is what we're after. And usually you just have to open up all the documents, figure out how they work, and then do that. And so 80% of the time that you spend on lawyers is really not well used. It's administrative.
Right. Right. And making sure that they don't make mistakes either, because there's so many different versions to consolidate between and all that stuff, which is not a slam on lawyers. This is more like, well, there's a high margin for error because
Exactly
it's
right.
so, yeah. Okay, yeah, just that sounds like that's what you're saying here. When our lawyers negotiating a deal, there are a few different contracts involved, and each contract has many versions, right? Lots of negotiation back and forth, and then you amend the contract, and then you amend that contract, and so forth. Okay, by email, lawyers usually manually save the attachment to your share folder, right? And then you have the problem we talked about. but it's full of mess. These have different names. The timestamps aren't reliable, right? And there's also no common naming scheme for a document or whatever, or you, like you said, it could be like -final one, or final, or all that stuff. And it's kind of up to people themselves, and they're doing it over email too, which is kind of, there's a lot of freedom in email, which is it's cool, but also kind of tough to when you want something structured. Let's see. These have different names. The time steps are
Another
reliable.
vector that we don't have to get into today, but which is a signed version and which is not a signed version, often also another thing, but similar concept.
Right. Yeah, that seems also quite paramount. Like, oh, I signed this version. And I guess when you then make a new version of a document, now I'm just curious, when you make it, if you sign a document and then there comes a new or can there ever be a new version of that document, or is that a whole other round of negotiations? Or
Often you'll send it out for signature and then someone will catch an issue, and so it won't get fully signed, and then you'll make edits. So you can have partial signatures all the way through. And yeah, this is the messy world of documents. Right?
yeah.
That whoever came up with that open office spec really screwed us all for a few decades. But
Can you ever have a fully signed contract that's that then gets amended or something, and it gets its status revoked or something?
Usually that would be a net new document. So you'll have the final contract, and then you might have a new amendment or a new terminating agreement or notice of termination, but also possible. And yeah, so these documents, when they're part of a single deal file, they're not disconnected. They're all related to the deal in some way. And so that might be the next step up from this is, well, first you identify the documents and the versions in the order they go in, and then, well, also how do these relate to each other and how do they form part of the deal? And then you can start to see how this tech can just keep growing, because now it's, well, how does this deal compare to the other 30 deals that are of the same shape, and what can we, by comparing? So these are the sorts of questions and exercises that I'm really keen on, and so my day job is answering these sorts of questions in the world of GPT-4 plus. What can we do to take this out of the hands of humans?
Okay.
Do you always assume that documents versions will be in a linear line, like will be linear rather than, okay, so it could be a tree, like it could branch.
It could branch. You could have kind of subsets of it, but I would say in the spirit of thin slice of the wedge, probably that's a good simplification to start with, but not to restrain us from discussion or anything.
Okay, yeah.
And am I right in thinking that what's most important when you get that folder of documents is knowing sort of a high level abstract concept of the document, regardless of its version and whatever the latest version of it is? Like the thing you want most is, what is the latest version of each of the canonical documents in a folder?
Yeah, in priority, I'd always want to know what is the current in time. And then I'd want to know what is the change from the previous version circulated.
Yeah. Okay.
Those are always the two most interesting things. I think it's just the nature of human memory, is anything beyond that is kind of the long tail, and we can go dig into it if we need to. But like, I remember where it's at and I've got something new. What changed?
Yeah.
Okay. See, just scanning here. So we're building tools to organize this messy dump of documents, PDF and Word documents with unreliable timestamps and file names. We will use LLMs to take a best guess at what different types of contracts that are part of the deal, identify the different versions of each contract and the order of the versions in time. That's the linear part we're talking about, yeah. And C, provide an incremental summary of the change between each version of the same contract. And that's the LLM part, I suppose, of them giving a Hail Mary pass to them and say, hope you know how to diff these things. Let's see, existing data. The existing database has a table of clients, and each client has many deals. Each deal also has a link to a Google Drive folder URL, and this folder is a big messy super different deal contracts. Each contract may have many versions, right? So in a way, it's almost like they have this Google Drive set up, but really we'd want to own that structure as opposed to keep shelving out to Google Drive or whatever. I don't even know how we like do that or hide documents between or whatever. Let's see. And then every time a new contract.
Can I ask?
Yeah.
Can I ask one question just to clarify? Sorry, I stepped away from you. If you have a document at a given point in time, and multiple people may have branched off of that document to create changes separately. I think this is the question, Jeremy, you asked about linear versus branching. Is that the case? And so, Ajay, you said as a simplification, let's assume that there is only one future iteration of that of the current document. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, I think so, because it's for the reasons that there's not a good way to manage diffs in that binary format. Typically, one lawyer holds the pen. That's actually the expression you use. Who's got the pen? I'll take the pen. So generally speaking, you just avoid the tree structure because it's too complicated. And so that's why I think it's a pretty good simplification.
Okay.
But so they're avoiding the tree structure through an agreement between themselves, essentially, that we're saying, hey, this gets way too difficult, so let's not do this in parallel or whatever. Yeah, it's concurrent lawyering.
And if you didn't need to avoid that, then there's probably way more efficient ways to do this, right? Even imagine if a Word document could be conceptually sliced to, well, this is the price section, and this is the delivery and shipment section, and this is the insurance section, and that every time I received a contract, all I had to look was, there's a lot of companies, like Ironclad is probably the biggest leader right now. They're like a YC backed startup that's been doing this for a decade. So there's a lot of activity in the space, but everyone's going after law firms or big companies. But the bulk of the market is just individual lawyers who spend most of their time saving attachments from email and putting it into their folders. So the Google Drive in future state, where we intend to go with this is to use the Google Drive as the sync, because that's the existing process that this particular customer has. So we don't have to do it today, or maybe, but like what I had in mind was the Google Drive we would index it basically, and so we would still be the source of truth. But maybe we actually then control the output to the Google Drive, and we can reshape the Google Drive, right? The Google Drive is a disorganized mess, and maybe part of this is it reflects what we have figured out, the organized. So I'm just throwing all this out there as ideation. We can figure out where we want to spend our focus.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Oh, I think I had another question, but I think I just lost it. But what's something to do with some of the stuff, or I don't remember. I was just reading here with every time a new contract is uploaded to a deal folder on Google Drive, the folder hasn't been processed. Yes, we want to try and build an organized index of documents versions. And when you're saying that we're still using Google Drive as like the storage place, is to basically overwrite the data they have there, or it's like that could potentially be lossy. So it's kind of
this is a bit open-ended.
Maybe
yeah, I'd say use it. The Google Drive is there, so you've got a repository of the raw contracts, and let's pull it into our world and ignore the Google Drive. I think it's probably where we'll have. Yeah.
So it's in a way like there's a Google Drive integration that this is just a place that they can go to upload things, essentially as like as a hook into their existing workflow. But see, I think to Jeremy's point that he was articulating there is, I almost wonder if we want to, just for the sake of all the ideation stuff and figuring out what we want to do, almost just sort of not care too much about the existing process, and then we can always start to touch onto that later. Because it's almost, I think we're going to get further if we, I think we're going to get further if we try to imagine this in like the best case, and then we can always like roll back to reality in a way. And you were saying here, if the folder has already been processed, to deal with a new uploaded file and update the index. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Ideally, it sounds to me like we want some sort of flow where lawyers could basically just grab, one or several documents, just drag them into like a drop zone or something like that. It's like, you handle it, you figure it out, and you match it up to whatever all the other documents I have, and figure out if it's a new version or things like that. Cool.
Yeah, I think that's a good proxy for what we're talking about here is a drop zone, and from time to time, people will dump documents in it, and all we know is that it's part of this deal, and we want to make sense of it.
Yeah, which is also interesting for that initial bulk upload there. How do we resolve versions? How do we figure out like which one is actually a later version that, I suppose we could use by like modified date or things like that. I don't know if dates get modified. That might be the proxy.
This is the part that like I've been spending my last year on, and so we actually have a good handle on that, using the LLMs, like literally by looking at the contents and seeing what's changed Often lawyers will put timestamps of their drafts in it. So there's a whole bunch of techniques. And so I think like for the purpose of the domain exercise, we can kind of assume the LLM is a fantastic human being with a high skill level, right? So yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what we're going for. Which is sort of the same thing with some of the shaping we've been doing is kind of figuring out just like business logic. It's like we're assuming we know how that's gonna work itself out almost. So this is almost more the organization stuff around and figuring out how to name things and so forth. Let me check chat here. Oh, see you later. You're seeing that. We're gonna put the recording up later. Cool. Thank you. See, I wonder if we should start with you had the existing database. Where was that? There we go. Yeah, existing data table of clients. Each client has many deals. So there's a link to Google Drive folder here. Because that's the whole Google Drive thing. Okay. So what I think I'm gonna do is just to model that, kind of pretend that we have it. What was it? Has many deals essentially, and then I guess we have a deal in there that then has many documents potentially. Now we're already getting into like some nifty
I'm
ground
wondering
there.
if,
How do we want to?
yeah, if I feel like this idea of the folder is important, and I wonder if it's
Yeah.
synonymous with the deal, or if a deal could have more than one folder or drop zone or whatever it is, collection of documents.
I think in my philosophy, this would be the classic case where I would assume that there's one to many, just because why not, and it can be an easy simplification. Yeah.
Yeah.
One to many as in has many folders or?
Yeah, or repositories, or I'm not sure how you want to genericize it, but some concept of a document store of some kind.
Right.
So far, I
Yeah.
like folder. I think it makes sense. You got files, you
Yeah.
got folders.
Yeah. Okay, let's try that and then do folder. And by the way, I'm not writing out all the like application rigor. We're kind of assuming that because it's kind of a little bit like some extra noise. So we just can go a little bit faster. We kind of know what we need. Let's see, class has many or it has many files, I guess. Flies, that's good. And then we got to be careful with file because that's Ruby's thing, but we're going to assume it's going to go fine.
Or we could say document.
Oh yeah, document. Let's do that. Let's do document. That also feels a little bit more accurate.
I think my first question here at document is like, is this the canonical reference for a document that has many versions? I'm thinking
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. I almost wonder if
That's
you
right.
want to do, what if we do like an upload or something like that? Or if you say like document upload or something like that to communicate that raw thing, before it's been processed, that kind of thing, or because I was thinking that document would be that canonical where we sort of collect other things in between
Yeah.
to sort of make this one thing.
Yeah.
And then like maybe it's something like this, for instance, has many versions.
Yeah, I like version.
And then if we do something like later on, which I keep wanting to think a little bit about signatures because I think there's something interesting that changes stuff about the structure. So we don't have to dip into too much, but I just want to touch on a little bit. For instance, signed here would be like versus that I suppose it would be latest that signed or something. So you'd have this concept of, oh, if we signed the latest one, this document is actually signed. And I guess you also mentioned that it could be partially and fully signed. So this is probably more accurate to not just be like too simplistic with it. Fully signed or like that at least this is where I'm coming from, that's what it seems like. Do we want to like, if we're signed, it's like we have a later version or there's a little bit of figuring out which one is the signed one or whatever, but yeah. And now I want to jump back out of that because I just wanted to finish that thought and then get back to the main thing we're looking at. Cool. So we have, what if we do document version? Oh, I turned on autocomplete recently and it's kind of, I have to reconfigure a little bit to figure out how it works. I'm not used to do it. Let's see, now we have a version. And then I'm wondering here if we want like, what does it has? One attached or something, just assuming what you say. Oh, maybe that's a file. I don't want to call it file because then we're getting into Ruby's. No, I think that could work because it's just an attribute.
Yeah, I usually call it a file that works
Yeah,
well with
that works.
as well.
Yeah, I just don't want a class with Ruby's like built-in file. Yeah, okay, there we go. file constant, but I think this works. That's
Hmm.
file. I have all the versions there.
This is, I think about it, the folder, beyond it being the source of these documents, if we're going to be the source of truth, is it really, does it need to be this intermediary between the deal and the documents? Like, I guess I understand that a deal has a bunch of documents and a deal also has a bunch of folders, and we're kind of pulling from these folders and creating the documents. But once they're documents, so open question, we can continue down this thread, but I, in the spirit of wanting to make this a dialogue, I just thought I'd throw that out there. Curious, like how you would receive that comment and what you would make of it.
Yeah. I think where I'm thinking of with folders, that was more like internal organization by the lawyers on top of the mapping we're doing. So they're kind of not.
I see. Okay. So on our end, it's a folder on our end as opposed to on the repository end. Got it.
Right. Yeah, on Google Drive's. Yeah. It's supposed to be called like a mapping or group or something, but I feel like folder would be a little bit closer to how it would look like for a lawyer if you have a complex deal or whatever and didn't want to group things into. I suppose another way of doing that would be like tags or things like that, but yeah.
My guess would be that folder makes sense, or whatever we call that makes sense for the largest set of documents that we have to resolve versioning for. So if it turns out that there's 3 shared Google Drive folders that you might have versions of the same contract across all 3 of them, then we need some concept of holding all of those together, because we'll have to resolve version differences between all 3. If it's always one shared folder, then it can be a one-to-one folder can be a one-to-one reference to the Google Drive shared folder, I think. But if we have to resolve versioning across multiple shared folders, we might need that to be that concept to like expand beyond that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense to me. I don't know, Ajay, I think you probably don't want to rule out if they're just using one drive folder.
Yeah, no, I think from what you said, I kind of like that. That's an interesting distinction between the logical folder on our end and a logical folder on their end. And I guess my immediate thought is, okay, if there's 3 conceptual folders, who cares? There's some duplicate documents. The LLM is going to take care of that anyway. I guess it'll figure out that there's some duplication, ignore it. And then on our end, there's the organization. And then I think one of you mentioned tags, and my head immediately latched onto that because it sidesteps all this sorts of complexity, right? If you just attach a bunch of tags to documents, and then now you don't need somehow that folder intermediation. So far, I haven't yet felt the weight of like the value, but again, in these exercises, it's good to continue with it and riff on it. Just throwing this out there so the viewers can have something to munch on.
Yeah, exactly, because this is exactly, we're seeing the mapping between what me and Jeremy are trying to learn about the domain, but you're the domain expert, so you can already say, and we're getting design feedback already, that we might be thinking, oh, folder makes sense for where we're coming from, but you're already like, we haven't seen that in practice. Well, then we don't need it. So, or we can change it, like you said. But it's interesting that you felt like tags were more helpful in a way. And I think what would be interesting if we do like more the classic tagging thing, that could open up a lot of flexibility in terms of grouping by civil. Like if you want to place something into 2 folders, you're really just tagging it with 2 different things, like you do with email. You can give them labels, and it's the same thing. So
now the LLM can take a bunch of that organizational work as well. It's not only identify the documents and the versions, it's what you were talking about, how do they relate to each other, and then pull them into the appropriate hierarchy using tags.
Right. That's interesting, because now that's making me think of whether or not a version is in some ways a tag, or like that, since it's the same document, is also a form of a tag in a way. I don't know how to look at all. I think that's maybe getting like 2 steps ahead, but I think there's something there that would also be interesting. So let's see. I feel like we're deciding that we don't want the folder, and now we just want the documents in there, and then we can look at tagging as almost like a different logical grouping within a deal for all these documents. Is that fair or accurate, or something else?
Yeah, that makes sense to me. We can also leave folder, nothing wrong with this at all, but whatever you guys prefer to riff on.
I think I'm sitting on trying to see what it looks like without it, and we'll just do documents here.
And that, I suppose, is one of the benefits of this approach that you guys are trying to formalize, is like, let's look at them both. Why do we need to decide, right?
Yeah.
There
Try
might be
different.
one reason I'm thinking
Yeah,
why
go ahead, Kieran.
why I referenced to knowing which shared folder it's in. It might be sort of like metadata to help sway the decision as to whether this document is in fact this kind of contract, or this version is actually this document contract, the specific document contract, as opposed to another one. Because what I'm guessing is it's like this is all kind of fuzzy. So you're using LLM to try to classify documents and versions and where like this create this history out of them. But like their metadata, like the knowing what shared folder it comes from is sort of like a piece of metadata to help potentially make that decision.
Right.
So it may
Yeah.
not
If you have a deal
Why not
in
make that metadata field on the document version?
It
I mean, I
could
agree
just
with that,
be,
right?
it could just be like when you create the version, we're going to pass along other information. Like if we got something else from
Or whatever. Yeah.
Google's API in terms of who the creator is in the system and what folder it's in.
Yeah, which is
Maybe other
also
things like
interesting
that
then of do folders change on Google Drive? Do they rename them, or or things like that? Then we're getting into a lot of complexity there too. Like, oh, they renamed the folder and now the old metadata is wrong. So how do we consolidate or reconcile that update as well, which is interesting. But I absolutely see your point with that, Jeremy, especially if it is like you were saying it earlier with if they have 30 different deals, how do we do things across them in a way? And in my head, I was like, well, maybe then they have 30 different shared folders with like a folder per deal, for instance. Maybe they don't, but that at least would be a structure that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think like the two ways to approach it is, one is to think of it as a drop zone and we're just going to blindly receive some documents and do with it. And then the other way is to think of it as like a two-way index, and just very different engineering problems, right? That two-way index, you need to, it's the standard sync problem that I still don't think Dropbox has figured out after, 20 whatever years. So
yeah. So maybe that's also a thing to keep in mind here, is figuring out how do we don't end up needing to become Dropbox as right now we're tree developers here, but like that's a pretty hard problem. So anything we do to lessen that, and I don't know if that would be just like, oh, let's just pass it to LLMs. I don't know. That might be super expensive then quite quickly and confusing. I don't know, but yeah. Okay.
Kasper, I'm
because
wondering if
go ahead.
if we I'm starting to feel like some of the things here I'm a little stuck on until I know what the process looks like. If we've got a background job that picks up a set of new files and then runs through them, each file, and I want to kind of know what that does.
Yeah.
To then figure out like what relationships need to happen. Because part of me is thinking like, oh, version is going to need a belongs to parent version or belongs to prior version, association or something like that. But I don't know if that's right, because it might be that we actually need a separate join table so that as you iterate over files, maybe multiple times, you might come up with a new connection. Let's say like there were 2 documents in a folder and one is the new version of this previous one. You might make a reference to that previous one, but then you had a 3rd document and it turns out it was the one that's in between the 3. Now you have to like renegotiate the relationship between those 3 by, like changing the associations either on all 3 or maintaining associations separately. Like in a separate, maybe even the associations are versioned.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I kind of want to feel like what that feels like. I don't know if that makes sense to you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, we can try that. Oh, let's see. Gotta focus here. Yeah, just try to look at that part. So I would imagine another thing I was thinking about just before when we got onto this thing with the drop zone or whatever. I was almost wondering, should it be that way that in my mind, I was almost imagining you could see this like index view where you have all these deals as like these cards or whatever on screen. And then does it make sense for us to drop into a specific deal, or would you just want like a completely empty drop zone, like drop everything here and then we'll sort of figure out which deal it belongs to or whatever?
That's a fair question. I think intuitively most lawyers would probably put it in the right deal at least. It's the organization beyond it that's
Yeah, because I feel like that would constrain some things that would make it easier, because especially I'm thinking about the case you were talking about, what if you have those 30 different deals and you want to try to, I mean, that's the next level thing of consolidating between them, but that means that there's contracts that are similar, that are quite similar, and then it's like which ones, if the contract is the same from the first deal to the next deal, but it's just the client name that's different, then it's kind of the same in a way, or you know.
Yeah, I think in terms of like technical solution, I'd be inclined here to think of something like if I think of Llama Index and the graph structures that they support, we're basically building out a graph between document versions, and that graph is going to be adapted as we learn more, right?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. That makes sense. Okay, let's try the see the other thing from the other side of how it looks like when people are uploading. So what I'm guessing then is that we have some sort of thing on the, or it's just a drop zone. Now, let's say it's per deal. Maybe that will make things a little bit easier.
Mhm.
So I think what I would want to see is almost some, what if we just do deals loads controller? So this is what we're going to be hitting. And then I'm going to write out the case. Oh, that's cool. Uh, 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 uh. So, and then we probably have a create action, I think. And then we're going to get some sort of sense of documents there. I cannot remember how direct uploads work, so we're going to assume we kind of know how it works. So we're going to get, I think I'm just going to assume we get like some files or something. So it's a multi-document upload, whatever, that we're getting them in somewhere and we can do stuff with them. So what I'd want to do is, I think I'd want like a deal processor or whatever, the process bulk later or something. That's kind of what I would do, just fetch them all and then schedule individual jobs for that. Deal processor, we could start there. Let's do deal processor. And then I don't feel like I want to write out the, guess, do I want to write that out? Process bulk later. Didn't file there. Do that, and then we have not that. That's from the other file. Process job. And then I think this is actually a bulk. And then we do
Hmm.
this thing. Whoops. Files. Files that delete. So the reason I want to do this like bulk scheduling job is just so we can have a sense of where things came from in a way. I almost want to do like a. And now I actually wonder if we do need that, because it might be quicker to just do. Well, I'll write this out and we'll see what it is, because I almost want to do like processor and then do like a, well, I always said bulk. Now I kind of want batch.
Mm.
These,
You want to know that these all came in as one batch.
they came from the
Is that what you're
same
saying?
upload.
Yeah.
I kind of want to know when things were dropped in and where they came from in that sense. So it's like if I'm a lawyer, I'm just like, I'm dragging 5 documents in, let me upload all those in one batch. So we can also have a sense of what happened there, retry that thing or whatever. I don't want to lose that information right away, at least. It's not super pertinent once it's been processed, but I do feel like it's kind of nice to see. And maybe you could do like a bulk, like what do you call, like, oh, this upload batch is like we have 5 documents here, we're processing the first one and what's the next one, and give like a progress indicator or something like
Yeah,
that,
progress. Mhm.
which would allow for see. But now I'm wondering if batch there, I wonder if we need the bulk job actually. Let's maybe actually now I feel like we shouldn't start with that. Let's try this. We're just going to say create these files and make sure, and then we just assume that it's all going to go well, and we're just going to give it all these files in here. Right? Do we need anything else? I'm confused. Let's do that. Cool. And then, and then we have the batch there. And then I will feel like it's almost, see where files. Oh, we need an extra thing in there. Okay. Where's it? Ugh. I just maybe a file or something. And here that belongs to. batch. And then there's a little bit of mapping here, figuring out like a mapping onto these files to create them and so forth, because these are just raw files essentially. Belongs to batch. I think this is like has this one attached, and then the now we're getting into like file again and file. I've got to go with this for now and see what it looks like.
Yeah.
You
can come back to that.
File, and then let's do process essentially. So that's, we're gonna assume we have one of these. And then we're like consolidate the, what is it, file.source to download it, I think, or download. You have this thing, but then how do we give it all the other context clues? Or let's do, got a batch here. Got the processor batch, and this batch is somehow connected to deal somewhere. Deal, right? This we're just gonna do. Now I'm gonna make a little bit of abstraction here. Current deal dot.
There's some pretty sophisticated LLM adapters that work specifically with SQL. So you can actually pretty effectively pass in just SQL related to queries that led up to you pulling that document and send it into the LLM and get the bulk of the context you need for free. Otherwise, if you want to abstract, you can just think of it as a JSON context thing that's an abstraction for now.
Yeah, where in here or something, or?
It's a good question. I wonder if there's just an open-ended metadata that sits on a bunch of these objects that's open-ended. Like, would I just maybe stick a JSON on a document and a document version and a thing? Because I'm not sure what I'm going to want to capture for each. That's probably going to evolve pretty aggressively. Maybe that's a two-way communication there with the LLM. Thinking out loud.
I'm almost wondering if I want something like that. That's just like going through, like you said, and going through all these things and collecting all the metadata in a way. So we're comparing this source document, binary document, with all the stuff that's in this, with all the metadata we have against it to figure out which ones to kind of fit with in a way. Is that what you mean? Or like, I guess I don't know in a way we're almost like, I think maybe something like this is like, there's some open-ended questions around how we do actually accomplish the last bit there, but that's like you were saying earlier, let's just assume we know how this works, or this is going to figure out how to work. So to have some of the other things.
For that matter,
like
we don't even.
Sure, go ahead, Jeremy.
I was just going to say, for that matter, it doesn't really matter that it's an LLM that's helping us do these things. Like, it could be anything. It's really just an outside process that is giving us a sense of where, like, the type of document that this file is. Like, if document is a specific contract, then we need to know. That's like one thing we have to identify. Then we also have to identify what was the previous document, what was the previous version for this file. Can we find one if there was one?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Then we have to create a summary of the difference between this one and the previous one. It seemed like those are the three things that need to happen. Like, what is this document? Have we seen it? Is this an existing document we already have, or is it a brand new one? Have we seen this version before? If not, which one is it attached to as the previous version? And then what is the difference between those two?
Yeah.
And in one sense, we can imagine any other system doing that. It doesn't have to be an LLM. It's like something else could be doing that.
Just to build on that, like, what the abstraction here is for a pipeline. So we're getting a bunch of files. We then need to prepare it. We need to pull in context. Then we provide it to some sort of abstraction, which is an API that will summarize or take two files and tell you the difference. Like, all those things we can assume are just API calls.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking with that, we could actually just, the code I have here, we could kind of simplify based on what you're saying too, Jeremy. We don't need to know about LLVM here, or LLVM, that's different. I was just realizing that's low-level virtual machine. That's how Swift gets compiled. That's what I was thinking. That's why.
Okay. That's what you're doing.
Like, I spelled it wrong. It was LLM. That's what it is. Yeah, I was looking at some Rust stuff the other day and it downloaded LLVM to my machine. It's like 1.7 gigabytes. Like, oh, why do I need so much for a compiler? It's like, so that's where I was stuck at for some, anyway, that's a whole other thing. But I don't think we need the metadata in here. We can let this consolidator do that part. And then I think
Yeah.
assume that this works. Here, we're just getting the data we need from somewhere else and we can process this in a background job. We can have like a process later or something like that. So that's essentially what I would, and then that calls a job that then goes in and calls process on ourselves and so it finds it and then we can retry that job and do whatever else we need to. So what I would do here is, like for instance, we could do, I tend to just do callbacks. Let's do process later. So we just auto schedule them essentially once they're created. So when we're doing this, we create this whole batch. And then it sort of will go through and create its own like, it could be like schedule later or whatever to schedule all the other ones, but then just in its own job goes in and like creates all these files and then it will have spawn it out like that. That's kind of how I would do it at least.
I do wonder
Yeah.
if all the files need to exist prior to the consolidation. Because when it comes to the step of figuring out, does this file have like which version comes before it? We need to be able to see all of the other files that exist. So if I drag 10 folders into the uploader, there might be 2 files that are different versions of the same thing, and they need to be able to associate together somehow in that versioning system. So I wonder if they need to be, if the files need to exist first, and then
Yeah.
we come back and process after that.
Sort of like this instance that we're kind of like we're creating it up front in a way and not where it goes, or I guess I don't know.
This might be getting into the weeds, so definitely feel free to pull it back out. But
Yeah.
generally speaking, every file would get uploaded and then it would go through a processing stage individually where you're pulling out the summary, you're pulling out the chunks and embedding them. You're trying to identify, oh, are there any key parties? Is it signed or not signed? And so that'll all happen at a file by file level. Then there will be an establishment of this graph that establishes the relationship between them.
That
And
makes
then, like
sense.
in true steady state, there it is kind of a simulation approach because like the order in which you start to process the files as you're like all that affects the output that you get. And so in steady state, there's no substitute for just throwing a bunch of simulations at it and finding strategies for how you can cost effectively pull out the relevant information.
Okay. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, that makes sense. That you would sort of do, it's almost like you're doing this pre-processing on the file to begin with to sort of build out as much detail as you can before you make this decision of where does this fit in versioning, or like what is this document? Is it signed, and then does it have a previous version, or what is its previous version? So prior to that, you're going to go through and find all the dates in the document, all the places that look like there might be a signature, the author of the document, the metadata that came from Google saying that this was a Google Doc with or it was uploaded by a certain person. All that kind of stuff pulls together to try to figure that out.
Okay, I see. Yeah. So I can see I skipped a step. It's not so where I went straight to the consolidation part, but I liked what you're saying with what you're both saying with grabbing the metadata first and all this like pre-processing in a way. Okay. Makes sense.
Usually when
This
I
is-
model these sorts of setups in I stick more to traditional data object pattern, but it's just an after commit hook. Every time you upload a file, there's a bunch of stuff that runs. And then
Yeah.
once the file has been processed, it then triggers another hook that updates the graph.
Yeah, exactly.
that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yep. Let me step out of this here. Oops. Yeah, but I see what you mean. Yeah. So once it's like processed, we can do some other stuff with it. Yeah. Okay.
Kasper, what are
So,
you thinking about
yeah.
in terms of the difference between the deal processor file and the document version? The
Yeah.
document, they both have an attached file. Does the version maybe not have the attached file and we just associate the deal processor file with that, or are we sort of recreating it once we know what it is?
Interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. I think you're right that actually I would rather want this to be like a, I guess this would also be a belongs or has one. Which side has the key in a way? I think it might be this one. A process file or
That's
something like that.
interesting. I think like I would have naturally reverted to the other thing and said the document version should be the root conceptual container. Like everything is a version of a document, right?
Right.
It's not possible. Like it does not matter if you don't want it to be, it is a version of a document. But like that's so in
Yeah.
terms of innate modeling, like that to me is where the file most logically belongs. But again, throwing that out just as counterpoint, please feel free to
Yeah.
factor it.
No, I think you're
I think
actually right
maybe a
about that.
counterpoint to that might be that if the version has, if version turns out to be the place that we hold the association, the link between two versions, then that could change over time. That's the thing that could be destroyed and recreated or updated. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, if
I would say the relationship between versions would be part of some graph that's an independent data structure that would just
okay,
hold references to each of the versions. But like, and maybe we're talking about two different things here. Like, to me, when someone uses the drop zone and they upload something, what they're uploading is a document version. But maybe what I'm gathering is no, for you, that it's actually the document version is something that exists after you've received the file and maybe done, like there's some logical step that happens and then you establish the document version, in which case I understand what the role is of that processor file.
Right. Yeah.
But
It's
yeah,
kind of, it's never a clear-cut case. I tend to be, it's just whenever I make these like importers and processors, this kind of stuff, I kind of like having that like a two-tier structure where it's like I have the like the outside of the system in a way that first does this like processing that's captured over here, and then it creates the domain objects later. So this stuff is kind of to capture all that part where we need to make the jobs that process stuff in the background or whatever, and then it ends up generating our domain model objects later. Even though
you
I know it's
derive all
more
the domain
code.
objects that get
Yeah,
worked
exactly.
by
So that
users.
it's kind
So
of
that
we
lives
have this
sort of-
like a boundary of the system that's kind of like helping to process that, and then it lets creates objects that are in the internal core once it's processed into our structure or something like that. It's more of a intuition thing, but it's never. It's just I feel like it's in the system I worked on before. If you just go straight to the internal or the more core domain models, I feel like I end up feeling like, well, now I'm like I've let the outside reach all the way into the core of my system in a way when it's just like processing thing, and I kind of want something that's like a intermediary or something like that handles more of the specific processing part in a way, whereas like document version is kind of an object that's a little bit more at rest versus like a process file is something that's like in flight or something like that, because once it's been compiled into a version, then it's kind of settled. So that's more of an immutable object in a way. Whereas if we add processing to that, then it's kind of, and we're also mutating that and putting that concern within the document version in a way, which is like, I feel like I'd want the boundary a little bit more. So we separate out the in-flight part or the thing versus the sort of the at-rest version, even though I get that it's like, it's kind of, at least for right now, it's kind of subtle, and it's like, do we need all the extra complexity in a way? But that's how I tend to do these sorts of things. I like that like I almost keep seeing like a medieval castle in a way. I want the moat first and then get in there when there's more complex details we need to then beyond just like you know, if you have a blogging system, you go and you know, create a post, and it's just we don't have a processor thing that goes in and then creates the post later on. But if it was more complex in the background or something, I might also do that, you know, just like, oh, check for spam, whatever, do something like I don't want to make it the final result when there's more processing to it in a way.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like I think I was seeing is like a user submits something, then we go through this core and then we hit the core, versus if we go straight to the core and then it has to go back out and process and come back in again, versus having like a straight line in a way. That's kind of how I'm seeing it. But it's kind of, yeah, I think it's more of a, but and then there's the specifics of how we've done it here, change different names or whatever, or all that stuff, but that's kind of where I'm going with it in a way. But it's fuzzy. Yeah. Okay. I hope that makes sense, but that's kind of where I'm going with some of the stuff. It's more of like yeah, I want this moat for some reason, but yeah.
So when
It's
users
really
interact
interesting
with,
how this nuance. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Jay.
no, you're good. Go ahead, Jay.
No, I was just saying it's really interesting, like how this is a pretty basic concept, and my thought was like, well, we're gonna like how many different ways can you slice it? But it's like, yeah, a billion. It doesn't matter how basic or settled it feels, right? Like there's just a billion ways you can slice it. So really interesting.
Yeah, and it also might not be right. This is just more like, I feel like I'm kind of where I'm coming from. I feel like I nailed it with that line drawing. It's like I want this to be like a straight line, versus if you do it straight into document, we sort of go back out to process and back. But other things also do that sometimes, so I don't know why I'm hitching on that in a way. But to me, it kind of seems important somehow or something. But yeah, it might not be good. So, okay. Cool. So what do we want to look at? What else do we want to look at later? I think, Jeremy, we came from all the stuff where you were asking what the uploading process will kind of look like. Do you feel this covers it enough, or move on to the next bit or something?
I think I'm still curious how, let's say we go out to this outside system and it says, all right, the current file you're working on, we found it's the version that it came from. What do we do then? How do we model that? The graph part that Ajay's talking about in terms of we got this file and what is its previous version, and then summarizing the difference between the two. I'd like to see how that piece works.
Yeah. Good point. Oh, I think I actually screw up based on all what we just talked about. So now we're doing this. I almost want to see based on what we just talked about. Yeah, now I see the point you're making with maybe it doesn't make sense to do self file self, and then what's the deal? It's in our own deal. I don't know if that is too much or whatever, but let's go with that for now.
We need to identify the document prior to that step. To create the version right now, we would need to identify its document.
Yeah, that's true. Which I almost wonder if we want to skip that in a way, or like not require a document up front, but the version is just hold on, I'm just sketching some more stuff out, like remembering what is it to what is it, pending processed failed or something like that.
Okay.
The usual, that's how I tend to do it. So if we're not processed, then we're processed, and then rescue here, and then we're like, I actually want to call it error in a way, and then raise and do. That's just how I tend to do processing. So that's kind of why I like having this kind of separately. You could also have a document version processor that then does this or something, and it's modeled a little more like internally. But anyway, kind of with this. Okay. So you were saying with want to see how we do the consolidation. So what I'm wondering about is if we do now, it's just file, and that's belonging to that processor file away. Let's actually call it. Then that doesn't make sense either. Okay, yeah. Lots of stuff. See, what I'm wondering about is what I want to mark this as optional. And then the consolidation is really figuring out how to attach, or like that, the canonical reference of this document to a specific version of something. Yeah.
So we start by creating its version, and then we call out to this other service that can resolve what the document is.
Yeah. Suppose. Like, because this goes to what we're saying, it was like, now that we created a document, now we can actually hook into that and figure out, now we're within the system, and then we gotta like, find a document for it. I guess it's kind of how it like, how that will work is in a little bit. Let's do, I'm not gonna do this in a background job console. Date. And then this is where I feel like I just want to do that Hail Mary pass to the LLM or whatever and figure out, hey, you figure it out. We have the deal, we have the other stuff. You know,
I think we can assume that if it does this job properly, that we send it this version, and it knows all the other documents that exist for this deal, then it should be able to either return a brand new document if it happens to be like the first one of its type, or provide the document that it should be referenced to.
yeah. Yeah, we can try to see what that would look like. So I'm gonna assume that we can do so something that still irks me about this processed file thing. Because I think what I'm realizing is like this could actually still be a file, but then the process file would then just attach its file too. So that we're creating an extra, because like active storage has all these blobs and things, and then you generate attachments to that, which is like a join table between the object and the specific blob. So now we can make an extra attachment to the same blob versus without copying it or something. I feel like I almost want that in a way. I don't know why I keep getting hung up on all this stuff, but let's see.
Is it something
Anyway.
about the name processed? Is that what's
I don't know.
bothering
It
you?
was more like I don't want this internal or more core model to reference the processing kind. I almost want that the result of that to just be, now we've crossed over from all the processing stuff, and now we're within our own system. So we don't want to go back out in a way.
Even
so.
knowing that we might duplicate. Well, I guess you're saying like we could keep the same blob but just create another reference to it.
Yeah, exactly. So this will generate another. I think if I get it right, the way that it works, it'll just like create a new attachment to the same blob essentially.
Okay.
I think so.
I'll throw in a complexity here that we could probably park, but one of the things that we're dealing with is it's not as simple as identifying the document that the version belongs to. It's actually quite a complex process. There are candidate documents with probabilities, and that gets adjusted as you process more and more documents. So maybe it's probably something we sidestep, but just as we were talking about the graph and we were talking about, I just thought I'd throw that out there. So
yeah, I was wondering if there was some kind
there's
of
a whole can of worms
score or something like that. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, like typically when you use machine learning principles for this, there's the classification step, and then you go on analysis. So that classification step is, oh, okay, well, tell me what this document is given the following context. And so here we're trying to, I mean, it's much more nuanced, but we're trying to classify all these documents. That's the simplest version of what we're trying to do, is like classify all these documents.
Right.
Or
yeah.
maybe I should say classify these versions into documents.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. Yeah, I haven't worked with this kind of stuff before, so it's a little, I'm learning a little bit on the go in a way of like, oh, okay, I see. Okay, yeah. All the hidden complexity.
It often helps to just think about, like, to really break down how you would do it, right? Like if someone gave you a pile of documents that said, well, I mean, even that discussion we were at the beginning of, oh, well, don't you need the documents before you can process the documents? Well, yeah, like we do the same thing. We take them and we probably scatter them on the floor and then look for the most basic relationship and kind of clump them. Then we'd go at them, right? And so all these principles are ultimately reduced to technical practice with glorified AI access to LLMs, right?
Yeah, totally. Interesting. Yeah, well, so now we can assume we have a version somewhere, and then we can generate this. I just typed out document index because I like the idea of like what you were saying with a score and things like that and probability. Like it's almost like an index in the sense of like a search engine in a way. Like we keep going back and updating this index that then might have references to thing in a way. I don't know how that would work. But I feel like there's a piece I'm missing or something like that where it's like it's not quite, I don't know, maybe I'm tired to do whatever, but it's like Yeah, I'm trying to wonder what else we kind of look at or do or something. I feel like I'm missing something for me to take it further or something, or maybe we end up too focused on all the complexity of getting this to run or something. I'm not sure. I feel like there's something I'm missing in a way, or like the next step in a way, or I don't know.
I
Like, I feel
think
like we have all
there's a
the
lot of different
knowledge
pieces to
or
this that
something.
we can dig
Yeah.
in. We ended up going deeper on this one, but I think like really important. Like I've learned a ton just from doing this. So no pressure that we need to kind of go and explore the whole space. I know you guys said you had some other stuff you wanted to do as well. So like
Yeah.
don't
Because I'm almost wondering if
yeah.
like, because now I'm wondering if we ended up, and this is how it goes sometimes too. You end up spending, oh, this would get directed to this direction, that reveals some stuff, and we still learned a bunch and so forth. And like, oh, now it's a whole other thing that I hadn't thought of because I was like, oh, we ended up looking at this other stuff, and that seemed like important to get like some foundational stuff going and generate a lot of thoughts about like how do I structure this or whatever, and having lots of conversation about it, even though we didn't get with the like the concrete result in a way, but I still think there's a lot of design feedback here. And sometimes before too, I told this to Jeremy before, but you have probably haven't seen this idea, but sometimes I've done with a sketch too, and also just like deleted the whole thing. I just been like, well, we just learned,
Absolutely.
learned a bunch of stuff and we had a conversation about it. But if I don't like where it ended up or whatever, and or feel like, oh, maybe there's another, maybe sleep on it and come back to it and start anew from trying a different angle or more that's focused on like that index idea or whatever else we wanted with the classifying thing. I think sometimes I've done that, or sometimes I've committed just to Jeremy's committed something to Git or whatever, then going trying a new version, comparing the two and stuff like that. So there's still lots of flexibility with all
Yeah,
this.
when I think of like Toby often talks about when he started Shopify, they used to rewrite it every day, right? And I mean he's got I'm not, but like I think that's really the power of the framework in Rails. And when I think of what you guys are now trying to reduce to practice, it's another one of these compression frameworks that sits on top of Rails. And like one way that you can think of it is these are the techniques and the tools that let you read, because that's kind of how on iteration, like in writing, in drafting, the sort of cynical thing is, well, your best draft could be your first draft or it could be your 100th draft, but you got to write 100 drafts to find out. Like you can't know until you've done it. And so it's the same kind of thing, right? With software, this approach that you just got to try and see and what sticks. And so, yeah, like I think that really resonates, this idea of you blow it up. And I'll send you guys, because last night I just, as a thought exercise, I sat down, I pulled up the spec and I said, okay, if I had to do this myself, how would I do it? And I'll send that to you guys. And I think it's just
Yeah, that's
interesting
cool.
contrast, right? Or
This
like, yeah.
this repo is on my GitHub, so we can add your version to it too if you want to, and just commit it the same so people can compare and see and so forth. So yeah, can absolutely do that. That'd be cool. Yeah. Okay, cool. So
I'll
yeah,
try to
I'm wondering
start at
if
least one flame war with
yeah.
my naming choices. So
Yeah, exactly. That's great. That'll be perfect. Yeah. That's the real what we want out of this. Yeah. So, scheme goal. Yeah, okay. Cool. Yeah, I wonder if we should open up for questions for people if they have anything they want to mark on or things they thought about or so forth, and then maybe we could look at another thing in a way. Yeah. This is how it goes sometimes. We spend some time on it and so forth, and then we see where we end up, and then like need to take a break from it either. If we were working together on this for real, it would be kind of like, well, let's break for lunch or whatever. I mean, it's 7 p.m. here, so I wouldn't break for lunch, but and or come back to it later, come back to tomorrow or things like that. Cool. Yeah.
I think
Feel free to put
one
questions in chat or
one thing that would be
post.
nice to hear is like where people would go next. Because this gives you sort of, we did a first pass on this, and there are probably places where you have questions or where you might dive in next to try to uncover more things that feel uncertain right now. Like one of the biggest ones for me would be that one of the big things that I'd love to see next, if we were going to do a second pass on this, would be like, okay, where does this relationship live, connecting one file to another, and how we store like that, the relationship between two documents or two versions. And then if that can morph over time, like do we keep the old versions of that so that there's maybe the newest relationship between any two files, but we have all the previous ones too? Or do we only keep one relationship, stuff like that? That's like something I'd like to see. That was probably where I'm most curious if we did like a second pass at this.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of where I think I'm trying to go with this. We didn't get to it because it's still kind of like hitting a sieve right now.
Mhm.
But that idea with an index, I think there's something too that are thinking kind of like Elasticsearch and the way that it does what you said. I really gravitated when you said probabilities, Adrian. It's like, oh yeah, there's something there in terms of like a net can shift over time or something. You pump something over to this kind of index like that where you've used some of this metadata to figure out how to like build the graph somehow. Again, don't know how to look, but yeah.
No, I agree.
Okay.
Like, there's a lot of fascinating stuff there, and my shameless plug, that's what I would throw it as. I think as Ruby engineers in particular, there's kind of this one of the attitudes that I see out there in the discourse is like, hey, this API AI glorified thing, let me put it out of mind. But no, the truth is there's plenty of conceptual difficulty coming our way. And you see it right here. It's like in understanding these things, because there's a new paradigm in which we have to model the world and understand the tools and what they're capable of doing. So I think, yeah, like, totally natural that we're stuck on these things. In the Python world, there's a couple of libraries. I like Llama Index, but there's a lot of interesting work going on right now on data structures to handle all these problems. And you can think of, when you figure out a relationship, how do you explain that? You're gonna have to justify, like, how do you explain that relationship? And all these things are ML frameworks on top of ML frameworks on top of ML frameworks.
Right, yeah, yeah. Otherwise you end up in that state where you have all these algorithms that are collaborating, then like or in some ways you could almost say colluding because they aren't explaining themselves. It's kind of like, well, here you go, enjoy that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Cool.
Well, it looks like there's no questions
Yeah, no,
so
but
far. Yeah, go ahead.
appreciate the opportunity, and this was a fun little exercise, and looking forward to buying the first copy of your book when you've reduced it to bestseller.
Yeah. Thank you. We'll see. Okay. Cool. Well, I wonder if I should just go ahead and commit. I've had this in here. Let's do. Now I kind of feel like I want the document spec in there. So we kind of. Well, let me do.
I'm gonna return the video off for the rest of this, but I'm
Sounds
here.
good.
Thanks, guys.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thanks,
Ajay.
AJ. Thanks for doing this. It's cool. To copy it. The whole thing. Oh, almost. I have now. Let's do this. Copy the spec in there. Let's just be committing stuff. Let's do. Cool. I guess we push that too. Cool, and I can delete this file. Let's go close with the party panel. That sweet. And then the other thing we were going to be looking at was a I lost my right hand side. Oh, you posted it there. Thanks, dear.
Yeah, I just shared it with you.
Pop it in here and then do this. Do close the window. This and I'll save. Formula B. Cool. Edit a little bit. What did I do that for? Oh. Okay, I'm reimagining an old school forum app that's a cross between GitHub issues and Slack. That's interesting. So it both has like these almost like issues in a way where you can kind of converse and like
Yeah,
like
I
a
actually
thread
have
style.
screenshots I can show you.
Oh,
I've
cool.
done some markups on this.
Yeah.
So I think it'll make it more clear.
Yep.
I don't know if I can
That's not
share
good.
my
Just edit in here. You
screen.
should be able to share.
Cool.
And override me. Oh, there we go.
Can you see that?
Yeah, I see it.
All right. All right. Let me. Okay, so this is like Slack in the sense that you have multiple teams you can be a part of. It's not like Slack. It's more like GitHub in the sense that you have one user. Like every user has, or every person has like one user account that can be shared across multiple teams. So you've got teams or forums, and that's like these little things on the side that's like Slack. And those forums have channels, also like Slack, but within a channel, you've got topics. So instead of just a long running chat, you have separate topics, and that's where it looks like GitHub issues, where you've got a topic and then posts underneath that, and topics are sort of separate from each other. And so I started working on this a little bit. The thing that's challenging around this, or like where I've gotten a little bit stuck, is thinking through particularly the relationships of users to these separate things, like users to the forum or the team that they're a member of. There might be private or public channels. So in the case of a public channel, everyone should be able to see it. But for private channels, you would want to assign a user to that channel, give them, I don't know, again, that could be like membership. And then once you're within a channel, whether it's public or private, if you have access to it, you can see all the topics within it. But like GitHub, I want to be able to say like, subscribe to this specific topic so I get all the notifications about it. So there's like a way that a user could be related to, definitely to a forum, possibly to a channel, and then also possibly to a topic. And so getting the naming conventions right for that, and the relationships between those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and sort of a way of figuring out how do we broadcast or notify or things like that at these like different tiers, in a way where it's like where you use it just like hit a bell icon or whatever, like I want to subscribe to just this thing, I want to subscribe to this channel, or subscribe to the whole team in a way. And then like what's the fire hose in a way.
Yeah. In my sense of an inbox for this app, you would see a list of topics with any new post that you are subscribed to.
And probably also any new comments then for a specific topic you're subscribed to.
Yeah. Anytime there was a new post within like a new, like I would probably call it, say, topic has many posts. So anytime there's a new post, then that would come back into your inbox if you were subscribed to that topic.
Interesting. Wait, so what's the difference between channels and topics then? Or is it that they're the same thing, or?
So a channel, this would be like the marketing channel, and there might be several topics going. And then I click on one of those topics, and then it's got, this is basically one thread for that topic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Wait, you said one thread for that topic, but that's the same thing, right? A topic is just one thread, so it's just the topic in a way, or has many posts on
the topic here
comments,
would have several, you could call them comments or posts. Yeah.
Entries, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sweet. Let's just let's write.
Jump in. All right.
Let's see. Taking over the screen now. Screen. Great. The screen. Cool. Let's see. And you have that thing here. Cross between Slack. So one identity can be part of many forums. Yep, covered that. When in a forum, your channels that are public or private. Would you call it before? You call it teams before. So I was wondering if we should call it teams here. Just.
It was hard to decide if which name. I'm interested in your feedback.
Yeah, that's I kind of like forum a little bit more, because I guess it sounds a little bit more unique in a way than a team. I'm starting to think like Slack in a way, also a little bit like GitHub, and I almost feel like it's more like what is it we want to promote here in a way. It's almost like that discussion, and forum is kind of a nice term for that. I guess it's from like ancient Rome or things like that. Public channel, when from the channels that are public or private. Yep. Public channels show up to everyone, and private channels must be joined. Within channels, there are topics with post. Topics always visible to people with channel access. Right, topics for people with channel access, but you can also subscribe to a topic to receive notifications related to updates. And updates here goes to the topic and then not the, but there's also a channel. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Let's start with I almost want to just write like a user or something like that. And then we have a, let's try forum. That feels a little bit more unique in a way.
Mhm.
Let's see. User can then be, that's all we're like figuring out how to connect those two. So forum was one of the like, and then let's start here then. That's many channels I want to say, and then let's do I kind of feel like doing this channel, and it has many two topics, I guess.
Mhm.
And then I think I want to nest this like this topic. And then to I suppose there's also a way we could post it directly to the forum, but that feels like a whole other thing, which is not really, yeah, that seems like definitely out of scope. But so channel belongs to a forum. Some topics there belongs to channel, and then has many wait, just a specific topic, and then post on there or comments. I guess that's kind of interesting. Because what I'm wondering about now is like, how do we want to model the first post? Because that's going to have a different design in a way, like what you had in your screenshot. Like when it's like an initial post or something like that. That's very different from like a comment in a way. But I almost don't feel like a topic should a topic have a description, or should that be modeled as a post? And then the first post just happens to have a different structure. That's also going to be a little bit difficult if you want to do like infinite scrolling. In a way, it's like, what's the initial one in a way? I don't know. Yeah.
I tend to, when I've done this before, I usually make when someone creates a new topic, it's a form object that creates a topic and a post together as one.
Yeah.
So it's just the first post, but
yeah.
that would be my inclination, especially if you want the other things that come along with that, like reactions to the very first post,
Exactly.
reactions, versioning, editing, like all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it makes more sense to keep it as a post for that. Let's see. And then for this one, I kind of feel like I want to do a topic post or something. I tend to over namespace. We've kind of been here before in a way, but just like for starters, I didn't figure out if we want to general purpose it a little bit more or something, but yeah.
Mhm.
I know just people haven't seen this before. I can really just go into app models, forum, topic, post, or for instance. That's how the model structure would look for that. Okay. Post there, and then now we have a space where we could do things like reactions and so forth. You know, it could be like X many reactions there, for instance. And I don't know if we want to look at that first, but just a quick comment on that. For instance, it could kind of be like I guess it could be, how do I get the type in there? If it's specific emoji or if it's specific, I don't know. There's something there because we just want to do. Wait, actually, that's not going to do that at all. I can't figure it out right now.
I've
Let's
actually been
see.
thinking about that, but I didn't include that in the scope of
Yeah,
today's.
yeah. We'll see if we can make it there potentially, but because it was like, oh wait, there's always a ton of complexity there, like figuring out how do we want to do that, like the grouping, so the counts increment, and should that be an individual entry, or should it kind of like bump the count of like once you've created one for a specific kind? I think that's actually what I would do. I would just like,
okay.
But then how do you show it for the other person? So it's almost like, yeah, you could group on the reaction value, I guess, which then is like a one character string or something like that. Because then you can generate extra entries of who clicked that, so you can have the mapping on. So anyway, now we kind of did it, talked about it. I don't want to write it out, but I think that's kind of what I do. Okay.
Yeah.
Post and TL topics. So let's see. Now we have this idea with, could channels be visible, and could posts also be, or topics be? No, if you have access to a channel, you have access to all its posts. There's nothing visible there. It's the visibility is at the channel level. And then,
so typically channels are going to be public, but we could make them private. So if you have a team that you're part of, you know, this forum is for a company, then you could have a channel that's just for the C-suite.
Employees or
and all that.
C-suite. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So how do we want to model that in a way? Because I feel like we were needing some extra way of, I think maybe we just go back to this now. Has many, or maybe memberships actually. Let's try that, and then has many memberships, and then here it's like has many forums through memberships, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
that would
feels
let
good.
us render out that sidebar you had there, and the design of like, oh, here's the things you can click into it and show the access to that in a way, but still allowing for many users and many forums and all that stuff with the join table. Cool. And we can do has many, probably want to use this list at some point, or like a way to, for an admin to be like, we don't want you in here anymore, so out you go. Through memberships. Cool. Cool.
And membership might be a good place to have the role, I'm assuming, like if it's the owner of the forum or if they're made an admin for the forum. As
Yeah,
opposed to
yeah,
just
that's
regular
true.
user.
That's almost like can a user both be an admin and an owner or something like that? That's also interesting.
Yeah, I don't know what the levels are necessarily. There needs to be
Yeah.
somebody that has full authority over the forum to
Yeah. I like that though, because usually I see people do like, then a user gets an admin and it's just a Boolean and so forth. And I find like, well, but admin of what and where and so forth. And there is an admin throughout the whole system, but I kind of like having that constrained to just the intermediate relationship, like you were saying. But yeah, I don't know if we should look at I guess, versus if it's just a user, admin, and owner, there's a little bit of something around like visibility there or whatnot, but maybe that's for a little bit later or something. I don't know if we want to look at it right now. Okay. I'll also write this up just to be clear. User and it belongs to forums, so it's the join table. Cool. And form. Should we look into visibility or do we want to look at the notification stuff first? Because I feel like visibility doesn't really have any effect on the notification in a way. I guess, I suppose if someone gets booted from a channel or subscribe, we should unsubscribe them, but kind of other than that, I don't know what else. They seem kind of orthogonal for the most part.
Yeah.
So it's
I
kind
think
of
I'm
either
most
one.
curious about the relationship between users and channels and users and topics. Because once we've got a membership, then I'm a little stuck on what do you make this relationship between a user and a channel and user and a topic.
Yeah. Oh, went to the wrong file. Yeah, because I'm wondering now what should happen when, let's say that I'm the admin of a forum and I want to create a new channel and I've got like 5 people on it or in my forum, and then when I create a new channel, what's gonna happen then? Channel there, those things, right? Yeah, and that also
A channel will
depends on
have
the
a name and a
visibility.
description, and it can either be public or private. And if it's private, then we'll probably invite people to it.
See, but I wonder if it should actually have because now it's kind of similar to what we just talked about with admin on a user in a way, where it's like modeling that as an attribute versus like a domain record in a way that's kind of modeling. Because I think I'm almost wondering we want some sort of like I'm just gonna write it out while I remember. Participant. That's what I wanted. Participant or something. That's then also a join table there. And so a private channel is one that has no participants. And so then we get the private stuff from that. I suppose it's fewer than all the participants in a team or something like that. Across a forum.
Oh, are you saying that for public channels, you create a participant record for everyone, all the users?
Yes.
So okay. Okay.
And then when you join a new forum, you scroll through all the ones that are, well, I guess you actually do need the thing of like what happens when someone gets invited to a new team? Like, do you then automatically give them access to all the other ones, or like there's still some access control there you have to model? Okay.
I'm guessing in Slack, for example, even the public ones, it looks like you end up joining the channel like you have to take an action to join the channel.
Interesting. Okay.
My preference would be for this system that the user does not need to take an action. They're just automatically in all of the public channels. And maybe that just means there's a background job that after sign up, creates participant records for the, for all of the channels that exist.
Yeah.
Public
Because
channels
what
that
I'm
exist.
almost wondering about if we do like a paid or something like that. Oh, it's probably just a so enroll participants or something like that. Name description, but I think there's almost like what I would more think of this as in terms of like public private, because I feel like that's almost a little bit loaded term, because what we're talking about is almost like, do we auto enroll people or do we not?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
like,
this is
do
one of
we
the
want
places I
to,
got stuck.
yeah, do we want to
Um,
control it or do we want to let the system kind of just like automatically decide for us? So I think that's kind of what I would call the so this is kind of like a Boolean in a way. And then this would kind of get create after you create a channel in a way or something like that. Let's see. I'm just going to try to write this out. Participant dot. I almost wonder if we want to do something like this where we have the channel
Yeah.
form, insert all. What is it we're missing? We have form dot users, and then we have. I can tell I'm sorry to feel like it's been a long day in a way, almost, or a long week, I think. There's something here I'm missing in a certain. Well, let's write out the easy one. Form dot users dot each do user, and then we do participant. So we just do, well, we actually have a link to all the participants that create user like that. And then we can always do the fancy version later, but let's do something simple.
And this is when you create a channel, right? This is the.
Yes, we can look at that too. Let's see, has many participants. Right, and we create a participant for a specific user. That's the join table between a user and a specific channel, that participation, or I guess it could also be participation or something, but yeah, I like doing that versus doing it directly to the user in a way. I guess hopefully gives a little bit more flexibility. Enroll participants, that seems all right to me. What else do we need? Yada yada. This seems right. We get the form.
When a user signs up,
channel
we might
attachment
need
there.
something like a way to enroll
Yeah.
them in all of the public channels.
So what I'm wondering about is doing something like this maybe, or when you add a user to a forum, then we do like auto enroll. Something like that maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe let's start there and see what that looks like. Auto enroll. That's kind of a little bit. So now we can go through all the channels and those that are auto enrollable. And then through each of those, and then we'll just like enroll. Oh, we get the user, I think. That's the callback or something. So just enroll for all of those, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that works like that, right? So all the ones that's marked as auto enrollable, we go through those, look through those, and then create those participant records, I guess. Right. I feel like there's something I'm missing or something, or maybe it's just like, wait, so we have this, and then after we create the channel. Oh, create commit something. I'm just gonna do this thing. Or maybe it should actually be part so it's like sort of it's part of a transaction that gets rolled back or something. Maybe that's better for starters versus doing it a little bit later or something. Even though we're doing more work, especially if there's like 1,000 users, then we're kind of screwed here. But I think this is good enough to sketch out the domain while I get thinking about it and whatnot. And that's where something like using an insert all, so it's just like a single statement to just like, hey, just create all these and keep these participants pretty simple. Like they're really just meant to be a join table. Hopefully there's no other attributes on it besides the what is it, like channel, and it belongs to sewer. No, it did it again.
Do it again.
There we go. Yeah, cool. Right.
Do you have any concerns about going this route where even for the public ones, there's all these participant records when it could have been handled at sort of an authorization level?
Right,
saying?
right, yeah.
I'm trying to think through the downsides of that. It's a lot more records. They're not
Yeah.
big records, but it is a lot more.
Yeah, true.
Are there any other downsides that you can? Are there any cases where you think, oh, we might have missed something when we deleted a user, or if I can't even think of what might be problematic here.
You mean in terms of cleaning up the records,
or having a discrepancy if a channel got created but it was missing a participant or something like that?
Yeah. It's definitely, that's the tricky part with some of the stuff. I guess my thinking in a way is that if we do it, well, it is a little bit more involved in figuring out those touch points and figuring out the life cycle of these things, of like both the user, channel, and so forth, and how that participant maps between those two in a way. But yeah, because I think the other version, well, let's try to sketch that out to see what that would look like, because it feels like I do like the naming here with auto enroll. I feel like it's a bit clearer than public private, even though it's kind of, I might want to rename that in the UI too, versus I know that public private is kind of a nice way for users to think about it, but I almost wonder if that should be a little bit clearer in a way of like, hey, when new people join, let them have access to this, or I mean, I'm not sure.
I'm wondering if
open
there are any
question.
cases where we need to list channels apart from participants and know whether they are private or not. Like whether it's like if I'm an admin in the admin panel, I want to see how many channels there are.
Yeah.
I suppose it's fine to say like show me all the auto enrollable ones. That feels maybe a little bit surprising. Like
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah.
and
So
if
one
it's a
thing we're kind of
public-private term, it could be
Yeah.
like restricted or it could be some other term other
Oh,
than
I
that.
like that. Yeah, I think that's better. Yeah. Because I think what I was just thinking about, we're actually going to be constrained by Ruby itself, called public-private, especially on
This
the
happens to
class
me all
level.
the time. Yeah,
Yeah.
I hate that.
Yeah, so it's kind of, I like what you said, restricted, like restricted access. I think there's also something to do with, see, now I'm actually instead of participant, this maybe be more like, why is it doing that? Mark the whole file access in a way of like, it's still kind of the same thing,
Yeah.
but like, there's might be something there too, but I think that's might be for a little
Interesting.
bit later. Let's try to follow what you're just saying with enroll, unless we're yeah, I kind of like it. Like if we do restricted, so we can let's try to follow that and say auto enroll, and then unrestricted, I guess, is the one that's unrestricted. I like the enroll too. I guess there's also, instead of participant, could be enrollment or something. Because participate is kind of like a weird verb in a way or something.
Right.
It's like,
And with the forum, we have membership, so it's kind of nice to have a
yeah, an enrollment in a way. Let's try that
it
actually.
feels like that lines up better. Enrollment and membership.
Yeah. Right, we need anything else? Enroll it. Channels, auto enroll. And then that fits a little bit better too. And we can have this class level method we go through
Yeah.
each and then create for those. Yeah. Enroll enrollments. Let's do what do we do there? No, that did not work. Let's do here. Oh, it's starting to like find us syntax nodes or something. Like it's not quite doing what I'm used to. Let's see,
Yeah.
create enrollments.
Be great. Yeah.
Restricted. And then I guess it's just yeah, we want unrestricted. That makes sense to me. Yeah. Enroll all this particular user, auto enroll. Yeah.
This is minor, but would it be an after create callback there on the channel? The create enrollments?
Here, yeah, I mean, it could be that too. It was just more, do we want it to be part of that transaction when something is created, or so that it gets rolled back in case the channel doesn't get created or something? I don't know.
Is after create after the transaction ends?
Don't remember. I think it might be out. No, it's probably not, because there's after create commit, which is then.
I was thinking
Yeah.
before create would be within the transact. I was thinking before and after were both within the same transaction, but before would make the call prior to.
Yeah,
the channel created call.
yeah. Actually, another thing we could do too is also just do build, because then it'll
Yeah.
be auto-saved essentially, and I feel like that fits a little bit better with Procreate. So it's kind of like, and then let Active Record kind of auto-save it for us.
Yeah, I get you.
I think this is actually a method that comes from like enrollment, so it's a little well,
Yeah.
well, I don't know, but
That's minor.
something like that. Cool.
And then there's probably in the case of a channel that is restricted, there's probably a person that has control over that. Like, maybe it's just the admin for the team or for the forum, but maybe a channel has a moderator. Like, old school forums, you have boards within the forum, and those boards have moderators. Because if you're over on this board, there's 3 moderators that are going to watch all the topics and posts and flag
yeah,
and stuff like that.
yeah. And they also get auto notified or pretty much everything that's kind of part of the gig in a way. That's also interesting because then we're getting back to that role of just like, because I suppose the person could actually both be a moderator, an admin, and an owner in a way, and have all those roles. So it's almost like we think of having something that's kind of like a, what's it, like an XOR or whatever it's called. Like, so you could be both an admin, you could also be an owner, you could also be a moderator in a way. And those can also either be or together or just be one of them or something like that. It's almost like a bit flag in that sense. I suppose there could just be different Boolean columns on this thing potentially. See what it has, those role types.
Well, I'm thinking in the
It's like-
case of a moderator, it would be for a particular channel. That would be my guess.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense. So do we want to look at that, or do we want to look more at the notification thing? Wondering if
yeah, I kind of would like to see how you might approach that.
okay, yeah, moderation in a way. Because I think what I would want is almost like a has many moderators then, and that would then come from some other has many thing, which is then moderations, whatever.
The way I'm thinking about it
Grants.
is it would be the moderators would be on the channel. So a channel.
Oh, sorry,
like
yeah, you're right.
the
I
marketing
was thinking
channel.
forum. Yeah,
Oh, you're good. You're good.
right. I thought we were in a channel. Cool. This is like what it is, like I'm just gonna write this out. Just to make it weird. Okay, because you're kind of bestowed this like honor and award. I don't know. It's kind of it's probably gonna be changed in a bit, but I kind of like having something that's a little bit flashy because it keeps standing out. It's like, oh, that's a little bit too fancy for this stuff, but I kind of like what it sounds like. So you've been bestowed the honor of, or been knighted. It's like a knighthood in a way.
I'm curious, would
there.
you consider putting that on the enrollment record, that you have an enrollment with a particular role or
Oh, good point. Yeah, I didn't figure that. Yeah. That's true. Yeah. Because that would actually automatically be scoped to the channel as well and everything. And it would kind of be nice if it fit a little bit similar to mirrored a little bit of what we're doing on membership. We have that admin and owner there. It's like these two different Boolean columns in a way. Let's see. Oh yeah, people are running. Cool. Let's see. Yeah, let's try that out. Then we also get away from that bestowing thing, even though I kind of like it. Let's see. Yeah, so then it would be kind of more just like a flag essentially of like we have a moderator. Oh. Yeah, roles are always a pain in figuring out where to place them and whatnot and what to do with them. I like them having it more on a join table than I do on the record itself or something, on the user itself, because it's usually what tends to go on, and the user just starts collecting more and more things. I think this could work in a way.
Yeah, I like that.
And then there's in a view file or whatever, if we do something like what is it? Yeah, we have channels here. So let's say we're within this channel, and then you could do like, use or what enrollment studies, and then for each of these enrollment, then you both got the user, but you also got the role in a way or whatever. Like it's or now I'm thinking gilded. It's so weird with all this stuff, but like you're rendering out something that's like a gilded person or something like that versus the other plebes, you know, that are just in the forum, but but not the special hall monitor or whatever you want to call it. Like
Right.
I feel like having some fun with someone I know. But you know, so here you could add a specific class to it or whatever. If it's a moderator or things like that. So it gives us that
Mhm.
flexibility, and you can still write out the user name or things like that. And then, you know, you can
Mhm.
give them the whatever plus. Let's just pretend we have some moderator badge, you
Yeah.
know, something like that, you know.
Yeah.
And then we'll return nothing. It's just no whatever it might look like, you know,
Right.
but I don't want to get too much into it. But it gives us the flexibility to do that essentially, to
Yeah.
mark them as that. And then there's role type in terms of like if someone has, you know, I can also roll out oh, we're reading a specific topic, like, oh, you have access to, we can show the button that you have access to click the moderate button or whatever. We could just like, oh, I'm gonna hide this or whatever, that kind of thing, you know.
Yeah.
So it gives us that flexibility. I think that works. The moderator on this thing, and that's simpler than the other external relation. I like that. Okay,
Cool.
cool.
Yeah, I like that too.
Cool. I feel like we should consider that part good enough for now, and then try to look at
Yeah.
the notification stuff and how that might look. And
Yeah.
because there's something there to figure out, like when does something broadcast when? It's probably usually when records are created in a sense. Because and then there's a cascade too of like, for some reason I'm thinking of like, do you know what happens with like you have a touch true on an enrollment and on a channel, you could have a what is I'm thinking of here? We have many enrollments, touch true or something like we're not going to be using this, but I like the idea of like that cascade upwards, like
Back up. Yeah.
I'm created this like deep nested thing, and then we can sort of like scale up
Yeah.
and see if you have any for some reason the word pertinent is coming to mind, but it's like an idea of or an involved sense or something like that. But like it's some of this that anyway, I should probably write some of this out because it's starting to be confusing. When do we start? We have the post here. So what can you subscribe to? You can subscribe to a specific, not post, but topic, and a
To a
specific
topic, yeah.
channel, and also specific forum.
Yeah.
Right? You want to see
But we've got, now we've got a membership for a forum. We got a enrollment for a channel. We just
Yeah.
need something for that topic. And I think subscribing makes sense as a concept. Like
yeah,
subscription,
yeah, yeah. Unless
probably.
there's something else that makes more sense, or yeah, I don't think because I'm wondering if you call it subscribers, then at least means down a certain path, or is it some other fancy term like the bestowment stuff in a way, or something like this a little bit different.
It's
But
loaded.
I think it's
Subscription is loaded.
so
Like
what I
it
feel like I
might-
want to start from now is like, what do we do here when we create? So because it seems like all the action happens around when you create a new post, and that's what we want to display to people. So I feel like if we ground it here, that's going to help us with figuring out how do we then like scroll up the stack in a way. So I find if we want to do here, I actually would like to do like after create commit, and then I'm just going to call it broadcast later.
Mhm.
There's also like broadcasting or something. There's also something like I'm thinking of like a bell icon, like YouTube has, where we can hit the bell and then be notified of these kind of things. There's just some of the things that is leading me to think about what I know, or like is it called a bullhorn? The one megaphone or whatever. Like that's also what
Yeah.
I'm thinking about this broadcast. Like,
Yeah.
do you want to like have it be wider or like you know, I also thought of like if you see a lily pad in a pond where like or it has like rings out or something.
Right.
There's
Right.
something there to that, I think. But that's me trying to make it more distinctive than the usual subscriber, which we might not need here or whatever. I just think there's something that's fun to play around with that domain modeling that gets a little bit more distinctive or unique or something, because it's kind of
Mhm.
like trying to refix some forums. And if we just do, that's what I like both with having forums that be the name versus team or something. It gives us a
Yeah.
different flavor. It makes me think
Right.
differently. That's what I like with enrollment too, and what we have with membership. Anyway, that's a lot of words to be like, let's do broadcast. And then when I think this would be a job that would just call broadcast on us. So what I would do is do this broadcast. And then what does the post actually have connected? We're connected to a topic.
Mhm.
Right. And then the topic has the channel, and a channel has the forum. So we're kind of all the way to that. So right.
Are you wondering what goes what goes in broadcast. I mean, I can think of some things.
Yeah, yeah,
After a post is created, and anybody else that happens to be on that topic, you
Yeah.
might be streaming and doing a turbo stream to append to the post list.
yeah. I was almost wondering, I just
I don't
want
know
to
if
create
that's
some active records essentially.
okay.
That just,
Okay.
and
Okay.
then they, once they are created, they end up doing the stuff
Yeah. Okay.
in a way,
So
broadcasting to the
where I
UI.
had gotten with this, I don't know if I should get into this part. I left this out, but in my original thinking, looking at the way GitHub issues works, in an issue, there are more than just the comments, the posts by individuals. There's also a log of things like this issue was renamed, or
Yeah,
it was
all that stuff.
closed or reopened, or a label was added. So then you have almost like an activity feed for a topic, which would
Yeah.
include things like the post. I don't know if I don't even necessarily need to go there, but
Yeah, exactly. But it's kind of
my
like, should this be
conception,
this thing, or a post is almost like, where I've seen it done before is like, what is it? It belongs to delegated type, or is it just delegated type? I think probably just delegated type these days.
yeah.
But then you have those types in there that can then, so this is more like that container metadata type, so you can have that activity feed and whatnot. And then this can
Yeah.
have the broadcast itself, and then the content type can also, the inner content type can have some extra details. And like, do you actually want to, are you subscribed to this thing, or do you just want to see people who write on it, or do you want to see like system messages or things like that? So you can kind of split it
Right.
out like that and have the subscription itself be more detailed in that sense without being the system too complex in a way. So anyway, I wanted to sketch out because I think this is kind of what I want for. So a record here could either be, I thought about calling it target to, but I almost feel like that gets too broad in a way. So I almost want to have this be, it's either a forum, channel, or a, what's it? Topic, right? Yeah, I think so. Actually, I wonder if you should call this like a user post subscription. You're kind of subscribing to a specific post. Or maybe it's like or it's a post subscriber in a way. And it used as a subscriber and it belongs to specific. Oh, wait, now that doesn't make sense. Huh. Because now I almost want to post in there that like, where did it come from? And who are we meant to know? Oh, wait, no, that's not. Wait. What do we want? So how is it going to look like if we do? Because I think if we have something like this, we got enough to do like a post subscribe. Let's control over, create a. Then we could create one. And then it's just posts. And then I think it's current use or something like that.
I think it would be the topic. Like you'd want to subscribe to the topic.
Topic here?
I think so. Like if you're on a GitHub issue and you have replied to that issue, then you will be auto subscribed to it to get anything, any replies after that you'll get automatically. Or if you
that's true.
if you're on a issue and you just want to watch it, then you can go over to the side and click subscribe, and you'll get any notifications of updates sent from that point on.
Yeah. Because what I'm imagining is almost like a locate. I think it's like this. And you just find you only allow forum, whatever it is, channel, topic, whatever. Probably need to make this a little bit different, but just for now, it kind of like params record ID. I guess it would be, we would just stuff it in there for that thing. Or I guess it's actually just a ID and then it's a TID or assigned TID. But because what I was thinking was the subscriber in a way is kind of like, oh wait, now we're getting to, okay, I see what you mean. It's kind of like a little bit different. Yeah, I changed it around. Let's do the subscription. Because what I'm imagining is wanting that place where you can subscribe to all these 3 different things. But maybe we're getting ahead of ourselves in a way. Because it's almost like when you create a post, it's kind of like, yeah, let's see what happens with that. So it's just like you want to make sure that the user is actually, oh wait, this is actually a different thing we're doing. Let's just do this. We're making sure that the user has, whoever created a user made a specific post somewhere, and then we're making sure that they're subscribed to the post essentially, or the topic. So they receive any new feedback or that kind of thing. And then there's a broadcast, which is like broadcasting out to all subscribers essentially. Unless we're the user that created a post, because then we don't need to see it. Right?
Yeah.
Blah. Oh, and now we did the let's do the and we're doing
Yeah,
so
that's
let's
cool.
do this in a way. We're doing it this way, curves it down. And we can sort of use that and just
That's
find
cool.
this in a way. Could probably maybe abstract that a little bit differently or whatever, have it be like user subscription, something like that to find it. So because I kind of want it, I don't want to control it to have the knowledge of these models. I want that somewhere else, but where that goes, I'm not sure.
Right.
So
Maybe that's just in the subscribe to method and you just pass in the GID.
oh yeah, good point. Yeah. Let's do params. Let's try that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I like that.
And let's
like
see
that.
if we can define that on the way up here. Oh. Subscribe to. It does feel a bit weird that it's kind of two, but I get, yeah. No, let's try it. No, wait, because we're also doing a model elsewhere. In the internally here, we're passing a model directly. So I almost wanted to. Yeah.
Oh yeah, right.
Well, we can do, maybe we can do both. So we can do user. No, wait, we also have this has many subscriptions. I mean, we could do some other thing where we sign. I don't know. It's kind of, well, anyway, let's assume this works. And then we have a record here. So then we have the both ends the set standard is the polymorphic record. So that works. I mean, another thing we could do is also, we could also do this in a way. I don't know if that would be useful at all. I'm going to type on a record and then have it be types, I think is, what is it? I can never remember syntax, but like that, and have form.
The control
then
then
have
happens there.
Channel, and then have the topic in there, something like that. And then you get which one that we subscribe to in a way we like, because then we can ask like subscription is to a forum, or if it's to a channel or to a topic, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's never really a safe bet which one to use. Cool. Yeah, we're also running kind of long. So I wonder if we should just try to wrap this up kind of. I want to see that part where we do this broadcasting here, where we do that cascade upward. We can round that out. Broadcast, do. Yeah, because now we have subscriptions and everything. Have subscriptions there. So we have the post in a way. So now we have to thrall through all this like, well, oh, interesting. What if we do forum?
Okay.
Maybe. So we're now a record. So we have to find all the particular. So what if we do? People dropping off. Let's see. Yep. Okay. Gotta drop off. Really cool. Let's see. I think we do. So I want to do something like this where we do post, so we topic.channel, and then Or do we actually want to do, now I want to do like a, and we have that. Channel, how do, so we're kind of finding, based on all these things, so we're sort of expanding the set that we kind of have, where it's like we could be subscribed to topic channel or channel to forum in a way. So we have these are the
Yeah.
3 different levels we have to, but we coalesce everything so it's happening on one, it's in the same model, it's just condensed like that. And
Yeah.
then we hit on either of these in a way. So let's see, subscriptions to where, but this is to a post, so this is like the use. Well, there's also figuring out, well, let's do, so it probably might be this stuff actually. For either of these pertinent
Right,
records
right.
in a way, whatever we
Yeah.
want to call it. For each of
Mhm.
these, and then we want to filter by the user. Yeah. So it's both this, and then we have the user is one of, oh, will this find all of them? There's a little bit of figuring out some of them. Let's just do, this is users.
Mhm.
For each of these, we do like I don't know, create something or broadcast something, whatever, something like that. I think that kind of work.
Notification or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we probably want to generate a specific thing from something. Let's just call it this, and then do create. And so we have the, oh yeah, we've got to figure out what found it, but that we'll have that. So we have the subscription.
Mhm.
Maybe we should do it like this, the notified, whatever. Well, I don't know. Well, I actually
Notify.
saw the post.
Yeah.
I think that might be it because it has the details of the user and the record, so it knows where
Yeah.
it hit on.
Mhm.
And then the subscription, the notification that's created in here will just have those details too, in a way, so I could see which ones it was that hit. So we could also
Yeah.
explain where it came from in that sense. And I think that's to let things stack too. So we're finding by topic first and by channel, and I think this would also be a set that would be inclusive in the sense of like, it would find all the users. Probably want to double check that this is how it works because I'm a little bit unsure, but for all the users that we have, we can find the ones that have. I wonder if we actually can do, can we do, I think we can do this if we do users dot subscribe to, what if we actually let this other thing figure it out? Or like subscribers for something like that, for
Mhm.
this post. And then it'll figure out how to involve the user subscription and things like that.
Yeah.
I think that could kind of work. It's a little bit of figuring out whether or not it would actually, would these clobber each other? Just to show it again. Or what they find, or there might also be a distinct set in a way, so we don't notify the same user twice for the same post. But maybe that's what the notification does in a way. It's like, make sure that we don't like notify the same user twice. So we make sure that it's like unique
Leave
based on
that
the user in that
responsibility there.
sense. So, yeah, there's a little bit of figuring that loop out, but I think this kind of would work in a way.
Yeah.
I think so, but
Yeah, that's cool.
yeah, I can tell I'm kind of beat. So I think this is kind of where I can go for now with that. But I think we made a ton of progress on all this stuff, and I like where we
Yeah.
got to with all these names, and I like this. It felt like everything felt relatively easy, so I feel like we nailed the stack and the naming so far. I like the enrollment
Yeah.
part. I like the way we ended up with
Same.
moderator seemed pretty easy to make. At least we didn't hit a blocker with that, but like pretty easy to slot in and so forth. So
Mhm.
yeah. I think so. I feel pretty
Yeah.
good with this for now. And then, there might be other stuff or whatever, but this seems like enough for one session. We could always come back to it later with some of these questions of like, oh, can this actually work? But we didn't hit design issues yet. So I feel like feel good about that. There might be implementation issues, particularly around this part that's kind of nitty-gritty or whatever, but
Right.
we didn't break the design so far, and just like, do we want to make this subtract yet, or do we just want to do the thing in there? And then
Right.
like, do you want to call it notifications or broadcast or whatever? Broadcast might be. That might actually kind of like that. Let's do broadcast or a topic or something like that. But
Mhm.
anyway,
Cool.
yeah, I think it works. Cool. Are there anything else we should say, or like still recording here?
Yeah, I think it looks good.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah, this is fun. Cool. Let's see. Yeah, anything else we need to say to wrap up or something? I feel like we covered a ton of ground.
Yeah, they were both prompts that we did today are like very, very different kinds
Yeah,
of
yeah. It's fun to show that
challenges.
difference. Yeah.
Yeah,
A
yeah, I think
wide
that's cool.
gamut.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Well, we're probably going to do another one of these at some point or whatever. And so thanks to everybody for joining or watching or whatever. If you have feedback, please write to us or whatever. We've heard some really interesting things from people that saw some of the other ones. One person was talking about this feels like axe sharpening to help do all these modeling skills. And yeah, I don't know how long we went on this one, but we got to like 100 levels of code roughly. Well, that's actually not, what is it even without this? Yeah, like 87 lines of code, and we could kind of see the whole object graph, a pretty wide gamut of the whole object graph for the system. And it's just figuring out ways to set up the right associations. One time, one of my quips about making apps is like your app is in the associations, which this is kind of proving in that sense, because the business logic we're writing is not that complex now in a way, because we set up the right models and then we could just use the associations to hop back and forth in a way. And I think this could, I don't know what this could scale to, but at least I feel like at the very least it feels like it could work, which is nice. And then it could probably scale a little bit, but at least from a readability standpoint, I feel like it could kind of handle itself well. And having the membership means we could do the admin and owner, and I think that could work. So we just get set up with moderator. It's kind of the same pattern there. And that seems like that could work. So cool. Okay. Well, that was just trying to summarize some things. Anything else? Could we stop it here and then we'll do another one at some point, I think. Figure out what else we
Yep.
want to do with it. Cool. Thanks everybody. See ya.
It's good. Thanks.
Oh, I stop sharing and then stop recording. That's different. Okay. There we go.